Imagine that you're the general of an army, and the opposing army you're trying to defeat is very powerful and relentless. You have to fight hard for each victory, and it feels like each fight is an uphill battle. In the early 2000s, I felt a lot like that sorry general. Like most nerdy people, I got the idea in my head that maybe I should learn to speak Japanese. And with no real experience learning languages, I was annoyed at how quickly I would forget stuff that I wanted to remember. I had studied for tests before in school, but learning a language required that I actually know that information well, not just cram it to pass a test. I quickly started to think of forgetting as a relentless and irritating foe. Whenever I did remember something, at least in the context of a language, it felt like it was an uphill battle, and I was lucky if something really stuck in my memory. Now going back to you being a general, imagine that one of your trusted spies excitedly bursts into your war room and tells you, "I have something that can help us win." He places on the table a notebook that contains detailed and highly sensitive information on the opposing army. Plans, tactics, departure times, all of that information is now in your hands. That'd be really good news, right? If winning didn't seem like a realistic possibility before then, now it very well might be. Similarly, I've come to think of spaced repetition as like that valuable intel that gives me a tactical advantage against forgetting. It is the logical end result of the application of many years of research and testing in the field of human memory. To put it simply, using the forgetting curve model, one can predict with relative accuracy when something that has been learned will be forgotten. Forget it in 5 days, review it on day 4. Forget it in 10 days, review it on day 9. Forget it in 25 days, review it on day 24, and so on. By gradually spacing out the repetitions, you can retain information for a longer period of time. This is at the core of many flashcard programs, but two of the most well-known are SuperMemo and Anki. I've been using SuperMemo for quite a long time, so I'm kind of stuck to that platform, but SuperMemo, Anki, and many other flashcard apps out there basically aim to offer the same thing, a tactical advantage against forgetting desired information. Going back to the army scenario, having all of your opponent's battle plans at your disposal puts you in a very advantageous position. Still though, plans won't implement themselves, so you're still going to have to put forth effort to apply those plans to actually gain the advantage. Also, plans can be misapplied, so it's not just applying the plans, but correctly applying them that's going to make the difference. Similarly, spaced repetition algorithms, such as those used by Anki, SuperMemo, or whatever app you're using, having these at one's disposal puts someone in an advantageous position, but the person still needs to correctly use the tool to actually gain the advantage. And just as other tools can be misapplied, it's possible to use spaced repetition in such a way that you don't actually benefit from it, and those setbacks can kill all of your motivation before you even really get started. I know personally when I started using SuperMemo, I did a lot of things very wrong, and I wasted a lot of time and effort, especially in those early months. In fact, I stopped and started using SuperMemo a number of times before I really stuck with it starting in 2006. But those few times that things did go right, and I was able to recall certain information almost effortlessly, it felt like how I imagined Luke Skywalker felt, getting his first taste of the Force. Maybe I wasn't lifting an X-Wing out of the lake, maybe I was only moving a few rocks around, but I could see the connection between the two, and I could easily imagine what would happen if I leveled up my skills using this tool. So if spaced repetition is a thing that interests you, it's good to set reasonable expectations early on. Using Anki or SuperMemo isn't going to magically give you photographic memory, nor is it going to fix every problem in your life. It's merely a tool, and like any tool, it takes time to get the hang of it. I know for me, one thing I really wish I would have understood going into using SuperMemo was that the best results are going to take time. I had to unlearn my desire for instant gratification. Spaced repetition is kind of like the opposite of cramming. Instead of briefly knowing something purely for a short period of time, you're programming your long-term memory. And while spaced repetition can be extremely useful for certain things, it's healthy to think of it as just another tool in your toolbox. A really, really useful tool, but it still isn't the answer to everything. In conclusion, spaced repetition is the logical result of years of research on human memory. Using the forgetting curve model, the spaced repetition program will guess when you will forget information and make you review it just before you forget it. The space between the repetitions will get longer and longer. And while spaced repetition programs such as SuperMemo or Anki are very useful, it takes time to get proficient with them. So try to keep your expectations reasonable, otherwise the risk of an early burnout is high. It took me a long time to really get accustomed to using SuperMemo, but once I did, and spaced repetition just became a part of my life in the same way that sleeping or eating are a part of my life, I'll never go back. It's an investment of time and effort that's more than paid for itself. And if that idea sounds appealing to you, I would highly recommend that you investigate for yourself and get acquainted with SuperMemo or Anki and see where that leads you. Hopefully these videos will be helpful along the way.